John Kennedy just destroys Ilhan Omar. With classified evidence, she's finished. The Senate Intelligence Committee chamber stood as a monument to the gravity of American governance, its high ceilings and polished mahogany walls, steeped in decades of hushed discussions about national security threats, from Cold War espionage to modern cyber warfare. Today, however, the room buzzed with an unprecedented energy, a palpable sense that history was being written in real time. At the center of the dais sat Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, a figure whose sharp intellect and plain-spoken Southern charm had earned him a reputation as a relentless defender of truth, capable of dismantling even the most carefully constructed defenses with his incisive questions and unyielding logic. His presence commanded the chamber not through bluster, but through the quiet authority of a man who knew the weight of the moment and the responsibility it carried. Around him, rows of senators from both parties sat in attentive silence, joined by a cadre of intelligence officials from the FBI, NSA, and DHS, their stern faces reflecting the seriousness of the occasion. Legal scholars scribbled notes, and a select group of journalists granted rare access to this classified proceeding, watched with bated breath, aware that they were witnessing a rare confrontation that could reshape the political landscape. Across the long oak table sat Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, her posture upright, but her eyes betraying a flicker of apprehension beneath her practiced composure. Known for her rise from Somali refugee camps to the halls of Congress, Omar had built a career on bold advocacy and a narrative of resilience, but today she faced a scrutiny unlike any before, led by a senator whose reputation for cutting through rhetoric left little room for evasion. Kennedy adjusted his glasses, leaned into the microphone, and began his voice carrying the distinctive Louisiana drawl that made his words resonate like a courtroom summation. Folks, good morning, and thank you for being here in this chamber, a place where we've tackled some of the toughest threats to our nation. Today's hearing isn't about politics as usual, nor is it about settling scores or chasing headlines. It's about protecting the integrity of the republic we all serve, ensuring that those entrusted with public office uphold the laws and values that hold this country together. Over recent months, at the direction of this committee, the intelligence community folks who don't play favorites and don't bend to pressure has conducted a meticulous investigation into potential vulnerabilities within our government. What they've uncovered demands our attention, and it starts with you, Congresswoman Omar. Your story as a refugee who found opportunity in America has inspired many, but our analysts have found evidence suggesting that story was built on a foundation of systematic deception, beginning with your entry into this country. Kennedy's hand rested on a stack of classified folders, each one marked with the seals of agencies like the FBI, DHS, and Interpol, their contents representing months of painstaking work by career professionals dedicated to safeguarding American sovereignty. Let's cut to the chase. In 2009, you entered a marriage with Ahmed Nur Saeed Elmi, a union that coincided with efforts to secure him immigration benefits, student visas, work authorizations, and a path to residency, while records show you were already in a committed relationship with another individual. Immigration authorities flagged this early on because the timelines didn't add up. For instance, travel records place Mr. Elmi in London pursuing studies at the exact same time he was supposedly enrolled at a college in Minneapolis with visa applications filed under biographical details that varied just enough to dodge automated systems, but not enough to escape a deeper look. To get to the truth, we didn't just rely on dusty files or hearsay, we partnered with international allies. Interpol, the Kenyan National Archives, where your family resided in refugee camps, and even the Somali government, which has opened some of its records in recent years. What we found isn't a simple case of clerical errors or the chaos of displacement. It's a complex web of identities, passports, birth dates, social security numbers that points to deliberate, sustained fraud designed to exploit loopholes in our immigration system. On the chamber's high-resolution screens, a detailed diagram flickered to life. Not a family tree in the traditional sense, but a forensic map of interconnected identities linking names, dates, and documents across 3 continents. One passport issued in 2005 under Elmi's name showed subtle facial discrepancies when compared to a 2010 application alterations that digital forensics experts identified as hallmarks of identity manipulation. Another record showed a social security number assigned to you congresswoman used by multiple individuals to claim benefits, file taxes, and establish credit histories, a pattern that repeated across family members over decades. Kennedy paused, letting the visual sink in, his tone steady, but carrying the weight of undeniable evidence. But we didn't stop at paper trails, because documents can be forged, lost, or explained away. Science gives us clarity where stories get muddy. Under warrants approved by federal courts, the FBI's forensic laboratory in Quantico conducted DNA analysis on samples voluntarily provided by Mr. Elmi and close relatives in your family. They examined 24 genetic markers, standard for establishing familial ties with precision, and the results are as clear as day. The probability of a full sibling relationship between you and Mr. Elmi is 99.98%, with the chance of no genetic connection at a mere 0.42%. In plain English, Congresswoman Science confirms that Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi is your biological brother, meaning your 2009 marriage was not a genuine partnership, but a calculated sham to secure immigration benefits he wouldn't otherwise qualify for, benefits like access to educational grants, work permits, and a green card. Omar leaned forward, her voice rising with the indignation that had carried her through past controversies, her hands gesturing for emphasis. Senator Kennedy, I have to object. This line of inquiry feels like a targeted attack on the immigrant experience on families like mine who fled war, starvation, and chaos in places like Somalia and Kenya. Refugee records are often incomplete, contradictory, or lost in the upheaval of conflict. To take those gaps and spin them into accusations of fraud is unfair, and it smacks of prejudice against those of us who've had to fight for a place in this country. Kennedy met her gaze, his expression calm but unyielding. His response delivered with the precision of a seasoned debater who'd heard every deflection and knew how to counter it. Congresswoman, let me be as clear as a bell. This isn't about where you're from, what you believe, or the hardships you've faced. America's built on welcoming folks who've overcome those odds, and we celebrate that. But this is about choices, specific documented actions that don't align with the laws every American, no matter their story, is expected to follow. DNA doesn't care about your background. It tells the truth. And the truth here is that you signed affidavits under penalty of perjury swearing to relationships that science proves false. This isn't one slip-up or a mix-up from a war-torn country. It's a pattern of manipulation, multiple social security numbers tied to the same people, tax returns filed under aliases for the same years, housing subsidies and educational grants claimed through recycled identities. Bank records even show early campaign funds funneled into payments that greased these immigration schemes, suggesting this wasn't just personal gain, but a strategy to build influence on a shaky foundation. To underscore the point, Kennedy nodded to the technical team, and a secure video feed blinked onto the screens connecting to a legal office in London. A man sat at a table flanked by British solicitors, his features bearing an unmistakable resemblance to Omar's. "State your full name for the record," Kennedy instructed, his voice firm but polite. "Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi." The man replied, his British accent crisp and clear. And what is your relationship to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar? She's my biological sister. We grew up in the same family. Our marriage in 2009 was arranged to help me navigate U.S. immigration rules for schooling and residency. It was never a real marriage, just a way to work around what we saw as unfair restrictions. The chamber fell into a stunned hush, the live confession aligning perfectly with the DNA report glowing on the screen beside him, its federal seals and lab certifications leaving no room for doubt. Omar's legal team huddled, whispering urgently, their prepared talking points suddenly inadequate against the weight of genetic evidence and first-hand testimony. Kennedy pressed forward, his logic relentless but never cruel. Building his case like a farmer stacking bales of hay, methodical, unhurried, and impossible to topple. You've heard it straight from the source committee members, backed by science and records that trace back to entry points at our borders. This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a broader enterprise where family members cycled through false documentation to access benefits meant for those who play by the rules, housing subsidies, student aid, even voter registrations tied to questionable identities. Our analysts call this one of the most elaborate identity fraud schemes by an elected official in modern history, and it undermines the trust in our immigration system, making it harder for honest applicants around the world.